Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. What if I told you that spending rupees 100 at your local Kirana store could actually create rupees 500 worth of income for someone hundreds of kilometers away? And what if I told you that if every single Indian household stopped spending and saved all their money today, the entire national economy would crash by tomorrow? Welcome to the Keynesian model, the secret engine behind how national income is determined, why employment rises and falls, and how policy decision in New Delhi affects our household budgets. In the next few minutes, we are going to decode chapter 4 of the Macroeconomics using the real world Indian examples. So, what we are waiting for? Let's dive in. Look at the screen. Here is our starting point, aggregate demand. In simple terms, aggregate demand is the total planned spending across the nation. In a basic two-sector economy, it's what the consumer plans to spend. Household consumption, C, plus what businesses plan to invest. Business investment, I. Giving us aggregate demand equal to household consumption plus business investment. We can also say that AD is equal to C plus I. Now, pay close attention to the two terms on your screen. Ex-Ante versus ex-post. Ex-Ante means planned or intended. Ex-post means actual or realized. To make this crystal clear, let's look at Ramesh, who runs the Kirana store on your neighborhood. Before Diwali, Ramesh ji accepts steady sales and plan to keep up 50,000 worth of stocks on his shelves at the end of the month as safety buffer. That planned amount is his ex-ante investment. However, during Diwali, customers' demand surges beyond acceptation. Eager shoppers buy 10,000 more goods than Ramesh ji anticipated. Quite a happy Diwali, forcing him to pull directly from his planned inventory. Because of those extra unplanned sales, his actual stocks at the end of the month drops from his planned 50,000 down to 40,000. That final actual stock on his shelf is his ex-post investment. This unaccepted 10,000 drop in inventory signals to Ramesh and factory across India that demand is high, promoting them to increase production and hiring more workers. Now, when macroeconomics talks about investment, we aren't talking about buying mutual funds or stocks. We mean physical capital creation, factories, machineries, and logistics. Notice the key formula term autonomous investment on your screen. This long-term capital spending that happens regardless of the current income levels, it's a bet on the nation's future. When Tata Motors install a state-of-the-art robotic assembly line in Pune, that's autonomous investment. When Amul builds massive cold storage facilities across rural Gujarat, or when Amazon constructs a multi-acre fulfillment center in Bhiwandi, Maharashtra, that is autonomous investment, creating the physical muscle of the India's future economy. Whenever an Indian family earns an extra rupee, they make a split decision. Spend a portion, save the rest. Y equal to C plus S basically means income equal to consumption plus saving. You see the table on your screen outlining marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save. But forget the dry definition for a second and look at the human reality. When a salary increment arrives, a silent calculation happens at the kitchen table. How much goes to buying new electronics like fridge, AC, LCD TV, or dining out in some fancy restaurant? And how much goes into a fixed deposit for the kids? If a household spends 80 paisa out of every extra rupee earned, their marginal propensity to consume is 0.8 and their marginal propensity to save is 0.2. In rural India, where basic needs are pressing, marginal propensity to consume tends to be very high. That simple household decision between the shopping bag and bank account determines whether the next factory opens or closes down. Where does the entire national economy settle into balances? Look at the illuminated 45-degree line on the motion or your monitor. That represents the line of equilibrium where total national output, income or aggregate supply perfectly equals total planned spending aggregate demand. That's our assumption to reach out to the conclusion. When we plug in our consumption function, equilibrium income boils down to income equal to autonomous investment divided by marginal propensity to save. But here is how the real world self adjusts. When aggregate demand, for example, during festive season, Ramesh Ji's assumption for high sales. So when aggregate demand is greater than the aggregate supply, people are buying faster than the factory can produce. Ramesh Ji shelves empty out of unacceptedly, forcing factory owners to hire temporary or permanent workers and ramp up the output. It is pretty good for economy. Jobs created, supply and logistic increases. However, there is other side of the coin also. When aggregate demand is less than aggregate supply, goods sits unsold, unplanned inventory piles up, forcing plant managers to cut shift and freeze hiring. And that's a pretty grim picture, for our economy. This brings up the most powerful mechanism in macroeconomics, the investment multiplier. A small initial injection of capital multiplies into a massive total rise in national income. Look at your screen. The multiplier formula is there. The multiplier denoted as K. So, delta Y divided by delta A, autonomous investment, equal to 1 divided by 1 minus MPC equal to 1 upon 1 MPS. So, that's how it works. Let's trace it out. Let's trace this ripple effect in real life. Suppose, again, focus on the example and it will be pretty clear to you. Suppose the central government launches a new national highway project with an initial expenditure of say 10 crores. Round 1. Construction workers, engineers, steel suppliers earn that 10 crore as direct new income. Round 2. With an marginal propensity to consume of 0.8, as we assuming they spend 80% of their earned income. So around 8 crore rupees on local food, clothes, and school fees, mobile, fuels and so on and so forth. Now that money becomes the income of someone else. So here comes the round 3. Local shopkeeper and school owners now have 8 crores in income and they spend 80% of it, approximately 6.5 crore rupees, back into the market, and again it becomes the income of someone else. When you add up every single round of spending, that initial rupees 10 crore road project create a massive 50 crore of total income for the nation. Isn't it great? The multiplier is certainly a blessing of God. Now, for a counterintuitive economic paradox, is saving money always a good thing? Just think about it. From childhood to adulthood to old age, we Indian believes that saving is a key of prosperity. Future income kind of. Let's see. For an individual, absolutely. But Keynes, or our great legend John Maynard Keynes, warned us of the paradox of thrift. If every single household in India suddenly decide to save more and cut their spending at the same time, aggregate demand plummets. Because one person's spending is another person's income. I repeat, because one person's spending is another person's income. So, if the people are not spending, how come the other people will earn? So, it reduces their spending, crashes national income so severely that total aggregate saving in the country stay completely flat or even falls. Individual virtue, when practiced by everyone simultaneously, can shrink the entire economic pie. A kind of a curse for. Now, look at how it impacted on the jobs. Because if you look at Keynes, all this theory more or less was centered around job. Remember? Voluntary and involuntary unemployment? Now, Look at the queue of the job seekers on your screen. This highlights a fundamental Keynesian principle. An economy can be in perfect equilibrium and still suffers from widespread unemployment. Full employment output, the production level achieved when everyone willing to work on the prevailing wages has a job. Involuntary unemployment, qualified workers who are actively seeking work at market rates but cannot find it because aggregate demand is too low. Think back to the COVID-19 pandemic, lockdown in 2020. Millions of skilled daily wages workers were ready and eager to work at standard daily rates, but total demand in the economy was halted and there were simply no jobs available. To keep up economy healthy, aggregate demand needs to sit in the Goldilocks zone. And here comes the key concept. When it strays, we get two dangerous economic gaps. First, excess demand, inflationary gap. Look at the left side on your screen. A crowded, bustling market. Here spending exceeds what factory can physically produce at full capacity. Aggregate demand outpacing aggregate supply. Since real output cannot expand further, prices skyrocketed, causing inflation. Another concept, deficient demand or deflationary gap. Look at the right side. An ideal factory floor, aggregate demand is way more less than aggregate supply. Factory runs below capacity, unsold inventory builds up, and worker faces layoff. So, how do we steer the economy back on track when it strays on inflation into inflation or recession? We rely on two primary levers: fiscal policy managed by the government and monetary policy managed by the Reserve Bank of India. To fix deficit demand or recession kind of situation, government increases public spending, cut taxes, increase subsidies, increase government expenditure in infrastructure projects. Simultaneously, the RBI cuts the repo rate, just as they did when dropping it from 5.15% to 4% in 2020 to make borrowing cheaper, jumpstart business activities, and generate demand. To fix excess demand inflation, things get upside down. The government reduces spending, raises taxes, reduces subsidies, and the RBI raises interest rates to cool down overborrowing. For your exam formula, there is the cheat sheet. Look at the corner of your exam formula cheat sheet. It provides you the key formulas that required. Now, notice how central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, is to controlling all of this. What brings us to fascinating question: how exactly does the RBI print money, control commercial banks, and regulate the entire liquidity of a 1.5 billion persons economy? That is exact focus of our next chapter, money and banking. One more thing, if you like to have a more detailed version of this, please comment. I'll try to make a more extended and detailed version of this particular chapter also. So, get back to our next chapter description. So, in money and banking, we will break down credit creation, bank rates, monetary control in the simplest way possible. So make sure you don't miss it. If this breakdown helped clarify the Keynesian model for you today, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your classmates, and leave a comment as I already told you for extended video or well-detailed one. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated for the money and banking video coming up next. Thank you for watching. Happy studying. God bless you.